All right. Well, we are going to go ahead and get started here. I'm really excited to be able to do this. It's pretty neat that we can do this now. We are dual streaming today again on YouTube and Instagram. And today we are going to be talking about the subject of daily life as a missionary in Japan. And so I think a lot of people don't really understand what that means, what it means to be a missionary, what that looks like on a day-to-day basis. And so we are going to try to look at that today. So we're pretty excited about that. If you are watching, we would love to know where you are watching from. And so if you could just drop that in the comments just to let us know where you're watching from, so others who are watching will kind of see where everybody's coming from and where they're participating from. That'd be great. And we are going to be taking some questions at the end. So if you have anything that you've been wondering about as you're listening, if there's something that maybe you're curious about, be sure to jot those down, and we'll try to get to those at the end of our time together. So, all right, let's go ahead and get started though. And I want to talk to you about daily life as a missionary in Japan. And so, the first thing is I want to make sure that we're clear about is that daily life looks different depending on a number of factors. There's all kinds of things that play into what daily life would actually end up looking like for you in Japan. And even along the way, what your life as a missionary in general looks like changes. It's kind of like, there's different stages in life and there's different things going on. So I want to look at those first with you, just so you can we can think through this and kind of then get to what that looks like for us right now. But your daily life looks different depending on what season of life you're in. This might be a no-brainer, right? Like, duh, it's a different season of life. But sometimes you don't really think about that, that even as a missionary, there's different seasons of life. And you have different things going on as a person, not even as a missionary, but as a person, that will change what daily life looks like for you. For example, what I mean by season of life is, for example, if you're single versus if you're married versus you have kids, that is going to greatly affect what your daily life is going to look like. So if you're single, for example, you're not married, you have a lot more free time in the evenings, your weekends aren't committed to family, you don't have to take your kids to school, there's none of that. So what you can do is significantly different than what a married person could do. Another thing that you'd have to think about is, depending on your season of life, what you are going to end up doing in ministry is going to look different. And it's not like your kids are holding your back, your family's holding you back, or anything like that. It's just, as a married person, for example, you would get to hang out with other couples. Or if you have kids, you can hang out with families with kids. Whereas if you are just a single person and then there's like a family with like 3, 4, 5 kids, whatever, it'd be kind of weird or more difficult to spend time with them and build that relationship. Just because, there's things that you may or may not understand about each other. And so, your stage in life is definitely going to affect what that looks like for you. So we've talked about the season of life that you're in. But next, I want to talk about this, and it's going to be what ministry phase you're in, what season of ministry you're in. This is going to also affect what day-to-day life looks like for you. For example, when you first start out as a missionary, or you embark on this path, there's a lot of preparation that goes into that. There's also a lot of learning that has to happen. So, for example, where we are today, what we are doing would look very different from what you would do if you were to come to Japan and just get started. it's kind of like read a story one time about a guy who was just getting started selling insurance, and there's this other guy who's been there 20 years. He just kind of sits around and just waits for things to happen, but he's already got a ton of clients, and he's got a lot of business already moving in the background. So this young guy's like, oh, that's what a successful person looks like, so I'm going to do that too. I'm just going to sit in my office and do nothing, and maybe I'll get rich too. What he didn't realize was that other guy 20 years ago had been working nonstop trying to meet people and connect with people and build those customers. And he wasn't working from nothing. He already had a large base. And the moral of the story is not, well, if you work hard, you can sit around in your office later on. That's not the moral of the story. The moral of the story is, depending on where you are, whether you're just starting out or you've been doing this for a while, it's going to change what your day-to-day looks like. For example, if you get basically dropped into a city and say, okay, start a church, your day-to-day life is going to look very different from the life of someone who, say, has been in church planting for 5, 10, 15 years. They have a church going. They have people coming to church. They're discipling people. They're doing other evangelism, and they're working through the people there at the church. If you've got nothing versus if you've already got people, what you do and how you spend your time are going to look really, really different. So you want to keep that in mind. What season of ministry you're in is going to change what daily life looks like. The other thing is we're going to look at this, what season of the year it is. This might seem like a no-brainer, but what season of the year it is. This is also going to change what day-to-day life looks like. And, it's kind of the same, like in the States, when you might have, say, for example, whether it's spring break or summer break, or whether it's the colder months, the fall, like the seasons change. And with that, what you do and what you're working on will change dramatically as well. So you've got to make sure that you don't have this mindset that every day is going to look exactly the same, and every day I'm just going to keep doing this, and every week we're going to do this, and this is our rhythm, and this is what we do. Well, even if you go to college, your weekly rhythm changes, and you've got to be aware of these things. I tend to be the kind of person who likes to just have everything just neatly figured out, and everything just being a well-oiled machine running smoothly. But that is not the case, and everything is constantly in a state of change. And so you have to be aware that that's going to be happening, or else you might get very frustrated. Like, no, my daily life is supposed to look like this. It's like, no, right now it needs to look like this other situation over here. So just a few things to keep in mind there as you're thinking about daily life in Japan as a missionary. Now, and that might actually go for daily life as a missionary in general. But as we're talking about life stages and seasons of ministry and those differences, I want to take a look at this really quickly. I'm not sure if you can see this very well on the Instagram side. You could probably see it better on YouTube. I think my face is covered by the watermark on YouTube right now. We'll figure that out next time. Sorry about that. But the thing that you need to realize is that every season is different. It's kind of like Ecclesiastes, right? For everything there is a season, and that's no different here as a missionary in Japan. So looking at this timeline, this is, say, for example, you're like, I want to go to Japan, I want to be a missionary. What kind of seasons would you potentially pass through? And so, for example, very first area, you'd be looking at, maybe just coming to Japan on a Recon tour. We just had several of you with us that are watching right now, but several of you here and seeing what that's like and getting a little bit of a taste. But after that, you would be looking at potentially coming for maybe a shorter internship. This would be, Recon tours are basically a one-week trip to just kind of get an overall view of what it's like in Japan, and just a very bird's eye view, but with your feet on the ground. I'm not sure how you get a bird's eye view with your feet on the ground, but that's what we do, okay? And then from there, you'd be thinking about, and again, this would depend on what season of life you're in, but if you're younger, if you're in college, you'd be looking at maybe doing 3 to 6 months living in Japan on an internship. And that would allow you to actually live out some of those rhythms and experience that for yourself. And then if you're like, okay, I want to do this, you get some training, you need to learn some Bible. I would hope that you're already learning some of that through your church and through your school and all those things. But, get that theological foundation down. And next month, we're actually going to be talking about that a little bit, the theological foundation that you're going to need. Because there's going to be a lot of people that ask a lot of questions, and you've got to know how to answer them, and you got to know what they're asking and know what you're talking about. So there's that. And then you'll need to raise some money because you're going to come for 24 months or 2 years. When you have a kid, they use month. Like, oh, my kid's 36 months. Like, it's just 3 years. Okay, it's 2 years. That's to get the full scope of language and cultural acquisition. This is a longer internship. This is a big commit. So you got to raise money to live here, and there's ways you can do that, but you got to do that. And then you live here for 2 years, you learn the language, you learn what ministry is like, you build those relationships, you have connections, and then you got to raise some more money to actually start a church, because again, it takes money. It takes money to rent a building. It takes money to buy materials. It takes money to promote stuff. You have to raise those funds. And so if you're trying to pretend like you're on a long internship and studying Japanese and learning culture when you need to be raising funds, then your season is off. It'd be like, wearing a tank top and swim trunks in 40-degree weather. Well, I mean, some people will probably do that, okay? But, they're like, this is warm. But for most of us, that's not what we do. It's the wrong season. And so you have to make sure that your season, you know what season you're in, and you know what you're supposed to be doing in that season. And then from there, you would come back to Japan with the team that's been formed and then launch. So this would be an overall timeline that you'd be looking at participating in if you want to go in a deep dive. So, but for everybody, this just because you come on a recon tour doesn't mean you're committing to this, by the way. So that's just get your toes wet and see it for yourself. So no worries there. But I just wanted to show you that so you could have a better idea of what that might look like. So we've talked about the different seasons, whether that's your life stage, whether that's your season of ministry, whether that's literally the season of the year. That's going to change what day-to-day life looks like. But there's some other things that you need to consider as well, because if you don't, then again, it can lead to frustration. So there's some further things to consider. One, weekdays versus weekends. This is going to change. You can't do on Tuesday what you can do on Tuesday and what you can do on Saturday could look very different. And so as I'm thinking about my schedule personally, I have to think about, when can I spend time with people? We talked about evangelism and sharing the gospel and cultural barriers last month. I think that video is up on YouTube still. But if building relationships is important and vital to building trust and trusting relationships being the avenue to get the gospel out, then you got to spend time with people when they are free. Okay? So if people are working normally Monday to Friday, then that means your weekends need to have a little bit more structure to them, so that way you're planning to spend time with people, and it can't all be this just last minute stuff. You got to be thinking in advance, like, hey, what are you doing next weekend or the weekend after that? And intentionally setting up times to meet with people to spend time with them. So for example, what you might do on a weekend is actually be spending time with people, but on a weekday focusing on getting promotional stuff out and studying for a message, or if you're in language school, learning the language. Those kinds of things would be what you're focusing on during the week. Another thing, there's other things that just don't neatly fit into just a weekly routine. Some stuff just happens monthly, like our live sessions that we've been doing. We don't do this every week, so I don't put this into my weekly schedule, but it takes a significant chunk of time. So, we just got to keep doing that. The other thing is we also have other quarterly things, like once a quarter it has to happen, and we just got to make it happen. So that'll kind of throw a wrench in your weekly plans as well. Things like, as a missionary, with all the funds that you raise, you fill out quarterly reports. Here's how I've spent this money. Here's where it's gone. Things like that. So more paperwork. The other thing I want to point out is this is not a 9-to-5 job. You can't just say, all right, I'm a missionary, 9 to 5, Monday to Friday. I've done my time, the end. It really bleeds over into every aspect of your life. It's not just this thing that you simply just turn on and turn off. It's who you are, in a sense. And you have to be really, really careful with this. Because if you're not careful, it becomes your identity, and anything that becomes your identity outside of Jesus is dangerous, and it becomes an idol. So it's like a lifestyle. You're working on this, but it's not just a 9-to-5 thing. And you say, okay, I can't do it all. We gotta put an end to the work for the day, wrap this up, and pick it up next week. I'm always running into that. The other thing, though, is, you're not just clocking in, clocking out, per se. There's some places that they have their structure set up to do that a little bit more. But if you're trying to say, I just clock in, clock out, punch a time card, then you're not going to really be... sorry, there's something on my screen. I was like, what is that? That's... Okay, sorry, distracted. But you're gonna miss out, because if you say, I'm sorry, I can't meet with you, hang out with you, because I just work 9 to 5, and you got to meet me 9 to 5. The end. Like, people aren't free; they're at work. They can't be with you, and you can't be with them. But the other thing is, because it's not a 9 to 5, some people take advantage of that. And they say, well, it doesn't really matter, so I'm just going to just do whatever. And both are wrong. One side is I just don't work at all. The other side is I just overwork because this is my identity and I've got to have results and we got to make this happen. They're both wrong. So you just got to make sure you have the right mindset when you're doing this. So that would be under the further things to consider. It's not a 9-to-5 job. All right. So how daily life looks different in each season. So here's where we're going to get into a little bit more nitty-gritty, because this is probably what you're wondering. And so I want you to kind of think back to that timeline we had just a minute ago, where it's like, whether you're in language school or raising money or actually joining a team to start a church, and whether you're in an internship, all that's going to change. For example, if you are in a season of life where you are single, and you're in language school, then, your afternoons, or maybe your mornings, depending on what time, you're in school for about 20 hours a week. But then you've got a lot of other time where you can be trying to meet up with people, studying the language, working on learning Japanese, and making new connections. And if you're single, you can do that 5 days a week, 5 nights a week. If you're married, then you probably want to be home with your spouse sometime. So you need to figure those things out. If you have kids, then you got to figure out, okay, I've got to take my kids to school or drop them off at daycare. If they're older, then they would start going to school by themselves. But get them to school, I go to school, we do this, and you handle all that. And there's just a lot more puzzle pieces moving. So that would change. And then we've kind of referred to it already, but your season of ministry, if your focus is to learn the language and culturally adapt and learn how to live and adjust and be in Japan, then you've got to commit to that and say, okay, all right, every day, Monday to Friday, this is where it would kind of sound like a 9 to 5, but it's not. Monday to Friday from 9 a.m. to 1 p.m., I'm in school. Boom, that's what my life looks like. And then outside of that, I've got homework, and then I might be working a part-time job if you're single, to get more workplace experience and just see what the marketplace looks like and learn Japanese that way. And then I'm going to be plugging in and helping out at the church once I have the bare minimum Japanese to start teaching a Bible verse or helping the kids, color or learning those things. That's what your life would look like. So everything would kind of be spelled out for you. But then if you're in a phase of starting a new church, then you're moving to an area, you're showing up at different places in that area to build connections and build relationships with people. And so you're going to not going to be going to school. You might be going to this event, going to that event, joining this club, joining that club, to meet people, to get new connections. And then once you start going into a church plant phase and you have people coming and then you're caring for them and you're working on discipling them, then you're going to be shifting some of that time to meeting with them, studying the Bible with them. And it might be a weeknight at 8 o'clock, 8:30. It might be a weekday morning at 8:30. It could vary drastically. So your season of ministry would look very different in the daily life routines. The other thing is the season of the year. So, for example, we're recording this at the end of March, and we're coming up on Easter. So right now for us, we're getting ready for Easter. We've got a church picnic that we've got planned. We've got a egg hunt that we're trying to promote. All those things. So that is going to change what I do for this next week. I'm not going to do egg hunt stuff in November. That does not make sense. And so we're constantly trying to figure out what's coming up next, making sure that we're working on a good timeline to keep those things rolling. And we're not going to do a cherry blossom viewing picnic in the fall. You just can't do that. They don't really bloom in the fall. There's actually one place close to us that, because of the altitude, they bloom twice a year and they bloom in the fall. But that's an exception. Okay, that's not the rule. So typically that's a spring thing. Do that in the spring. If it's summer, then you gear up for summer activities and being out with people because there's longer breaks. So those things are going to affect what you do. All right. So now some of you are probably wondering then, what does James do? What does James's daily life look like right now? And I'm so glad that you asked, because again, my daily life has changed so much over the last 3 years. We moved to Japan about 2.5 years ago. And so, for example, Sundays, we have church. Our church meets at 10 a.m. on Sunday. We get there at 9 a.m. I am up probably at 6 or 7 or something like that, frantically finishing Sunday stuff. Been working on it throughout the week, but just putting some finishing touches on that. And then Sunday morning, we're at church. Our services go for about an hour, hour and a half. And then we go, sometimes we have a Sunday afternoon Bible study. So that's going on. And then Mondays, we try to take off and have rest and spend time with our family, because there's literally so much stuff going on and so much stuff that can happen that, you could go crazy just running from one thing to the next. So you've got to take time to rest. And if you don't schedule it, then it's not going to happen. And so sometimes you guys have to say, I'm sorry, I can't meet you that day. I need to practice my Sabbathing. It's a biblical principle. God rested on the seventh day. You take a day of the week and you rest, and you try to unplug from everything else because you need to rest and trust God that He's going to continue to work even if you're not working. Because with Japan's Christian population at less than 1%, you just look out and there's always something you can do. There's always something that could happen. There's always more to do. And so if you don't intentionally say, I'm going to stop, then it'll just keep going. It'll keep rolling. So Monday, we typically try to rest and spend time with family and take it easy. So you have to schedule downtime and keep it. This is also a reason why you probably want to start a church as a team. If someone says, oh, we're just going to drop you off and parachute you in behind enemy lines and you start a church, don't do it, because there's too much to do. And we're going to look at that a little bit here. Tuesdays, begin getting ready for Wednesday night Bible study, if it's not done already, and then working on Sunday's sermon, working on admin work, because, you've got to enter who came on Sunday, and corresponding with people in America, meeting with people, holding meetings, the people that are available, communicating with people, and getting an idea of where you're going. Sometimes out in the afternoon and evening, being out where people are. So, for example, there's a basketball court. You can go there. In the evening, there's another place that you can go. If someone else is wanting to meet up for supper, you go to supper with them to spend some time with them. Wednesday, I usually get up a little bit on the earlier side. I get out of the house. Typically, our family eats breakfast together right now. But I get out of the house early so I can finalize Wednesday morning, get everything done that I think needs to be done for that, or mostly done. And then I take most of Wednesday afternoon to be with my boys because they're in preschool now, kindergarten. And we're trying to make the most of that time. So we go do something. And then Wednesday night, we go back into Wednesday night Bible study on Zoom. Thursday, I'm diving into Sunday's message, discipleship meeting, preparing and promoting for events, planning those things. Like, say you want to do an event. You say you want to do an Easter egg hunt. How are you going to promote it? Who's going to come? Who's going to make the little Instagram square? Who's going to make the announcement? Who's going to do all that? When you're working by yourself, you literally are doing all of that. And it's not healthy, but it's where we are right now. So if you have someone that can handle that, you have them do that. If you don't, then guess who gets to do it? You. So Friday, finalizing Sunday stuff. Depending on the season, we're out passing out stuff, attending an event, trying to meet people, trying to get the word out. And that is, again, depending on the season. Like if it's the cold winter, then you probably don't want to be passing out stuff on the street too much because people just have their hands in their pockets. They're just like, leave me alone, I'm cold. But if it's warmer, then go out on the street, try to talk to people, pass stuff out. We don't pass stuff out every single day. We can't pass stuff out every single day. I don't have time to pass stuff out every single day. And so if you get this idea that, oh, missionaries just pass out tracts all day and they knock on doors every day, there's a lot of other stuff that has to happen. And then in the middle of all this, you sprinkle odds and ends like monthly stuff, paperwork, filling out reports. And it's like, wow, okay, that's not what some people are like, this is not what I signed up for. It's what you signed up for. That's why I'm telling you right now. It's not just this constant, daily, glamorous thing that you just like, I'm out always reaching people for Jesus and everything I do is evangelism. That's not what you do. And you don't really want to be doing that either. You want to be, discipling the people that you've met. So 3 years ago when we started, we had nobody. So it was like, all right, I guess I'm going to go pass stuff out now. But now it's like, okay, I'm going to go meet this person. We're going to study Bible. I'm going to meet this person. We're going to do that. So that's changed drastically. Right now we're gearing up for Easter, so we've got to stuff Easter eggs. That's going to happen this week too. Saturday, try to spend time with another family. So like if families are off, like the dad's off work, and then we'll try to meet up with another family and go do something fun. Like this past weekend, we went to the aquarium with another family that's been to our church before. Rosie's met with the mom several times, and so there's that connection. And we do that. And then Saturday night, I went and had supper with another guy that I know. He's moving, and so we it was kind of like a goodbye. So that's what we did. And so that's a week, and that's a wrap. And so you have to be very intentional about how you spend your time. So another thing that I typically do, like once every couple of months, is what's called Think Day. I take some time to just get away from all this because it's really easy to get caught up in the flurry of activity and not actually think. So that's another thing that we do as well. So daily life, yeah, it's not this super glamorous thing all the time, and there's a lot of details that have to happen, but it's cool because you're sowing seeds, you're building those connections, and even over the long run, we've seen the people who've been coming to our church, and even that, you're out. Several people who've come, they've either gotten a flyer or one guy and a lady that come, I was passing stuff out and they met me and that's how they started coming. There's stuff like that, and so that looked different then than it does now. Now, studying the Bible with them, working with them, helping others, it really just changes. So all that to say, it's a very, very full week every single week, typically, and then you just schedule downtime and try to keep it as much as possible. So yeah, that's what daily life pretty much looks like for us. So depending on where you're at in your stage of life, ministry, and the time of year, it's going to look drastically different. But it's exciting because you look back and you're like, well, that time we did that and we were working on that and glad to be out of that, or looking forward to doing that again, or We just had a Recon tour happen, and so my week looked very different that week because I was spending time with everybody who came on Recon for that entire week instead of doing our normal ministry stuff. So we are very excited that we're here, but we would love for you to be here as well. And if you're thinking about ministry, if you're praying about coming to Japan, if God's been putting that on your heart, then I'm going to put a plug in here for our spring Recon tour. Not spring, we just finished spring. Summer Recon tour. We just did one of these. It was great. We had a great time. We had 6 people from 6 different states visiting and participating with this. It was just awesome. And a lot of them, I think, and some of you guys are watching right now too, but it was eye-opening. We've been posting some of those videos about their experience on our Instagram. But if you're thinking about Japan, if you're praying about Japan and want to see it for yourself, I would love for you to come visit. This summer, August, we're doing one. It's a 1-week trip. You land on Saturday, you leave the following Saturday. It's a whirlwind. But we would love for you, if you're thinking about Japan or ministry, then please, please, please take the time to jump in and see this for yourself. I'm going to drop the link to that in the comments here, just so you can know where to go to sign up for that. But we would love for you to come and participate and see what that is like, and maybe have a better idea about if this is maybe what God wants for you to do with your life. So thank you so much for jumping on here. Now, I did say we were going to do a Q&A here at the end. So if you have any questions, whether you're over on Instagram or on YouTube, please feel free to drop one in the comments section. We will get to those. I know we had someone the other day message us and they're like, hey, can we just send in our question ahead of time? And I was like, well, I'd rather keep it with a live audience. So anyway, if you have any questions about what daily life looks like or ministry stuff in general, I would love to answer that. I do have a question that says, what time is it there? It's currently 10:30 in the morning on Tuesday, March 26th. So yeah, we had someone else who commented and they were like, hey, is this Monday or Tuesday the 25th? It's like, it's Monday, 9 p.m. Eastern time. So yeah. All right. I've got a question from Abby over on YouTube. It says, what would a sign language ministry look like in Japan? Is JSL something that could be learned from a language school? Typically, language schools are for spoken language, not for sign language. I'm not, since you said JSL, I'm really glad that you said that, Abby. JSL is different than ASL, American Sign Language. So if you know American Sign Language, it doesn't work here. It's different. And so I've been told. But if you're looking for a school to teach you language school, then sign language, then you'd have to go to a language school that teaches sign language specifically. I need to get that off. So there are deaf ministries. There's a significant number of deaf people in Japan. They even have a special mark that you put on your car. It's like a magnet. It means this is a deaf driver. So there are provisions made for that. But they tend to. You have to look for them. I've got another question from Ashley regarding senior homes. Do people go in and play music for them like in the States? And that is a yes. People in Japan do. I've heard of old people going to play for old people. Older people who like to go to like music, maybe they're in their 50s or 60s, and they go to a nursing home and play music and play the old songs that the people in the nursing home might like or remember. So yes, it is possible. All right. I've got another question. Is there a site you guys use for getting Japanese gospel tracts? There's a few. Fellowship Tract League up in Ohio. Lebanon, Ohio has some. The thing with gospel tracts is you got to be careful because a lot of them don't provide enough context for the Bible that's being presented. So again, kind of like what we talked about last month with barriers, there's not that background knowledge. So you can't just say, like for example, someone sent me a tract the other day, and they were like, "I say unto you, whoever," and it's like, who's the I, who's the you, what's all this stuff? I don't understand. And if you just pull Jesus quoting something, they're not going to understand that. So you might want to be careful with what you use because it might actually turn them off. I've got another question. How much would it cost to be in language school for 2 years? Another great question. You guys have so many good questions today. Give me 1 second. My computer, I forgot to plug it in. So I'm going to answer that question. Just let me plug my computer in. Living on the edge at 6%. But we are safe now. All right. We're good. How much does it cost to go to language school for 2 years? We've actually put together a spreadsheet that would basically cover most of what you need to live in Japan on a month-to-month basis for a 2-year internship. Now, this is for a single person living in Japan that's going to language school. Now, your language school fees, and again, this is going to fluctuate depending on the exchange rate. Right now, it's pretty good for those who are coming from the States. If you are in Japan, and with yen, it's a little bit different. But for 2 years, you'd be looking at roughly 10 grand. And that does not include room and board. So $11,000. Plus you need to pay for setup fees for your apartment, furniture, food, transportation, and then I think the visa processing thing and everything. Right now it comes out to about $11,000, and that can fluctuate depending on the exchange rate. But you'll be looking at that. And then you need another about $4,000, upwards of $5,000, depending on, again, the exchange rate, how much yen you can get for $1, $3,000 to $5,000, depending on the exchange rate, for just getting set up to live here as a single person. And then month to month, you would need about $2,200, $2,500 to live for taking care of what you need and living here. All right. I've got another question here. What are the hardest lessons you've had to learn in terms of scheduling? How does it differ from ministry in the States? One of the things, I'm not sure, even in the States, the way people do ministry is different, and different people have different ministry philosophies. So you have to keep that in mind, that what we do and what other people might do might look different, and that's okay. And don't be like, James said this, so this is how it is. Like, I'm speaking from my perspective, my experience, and there's other people who do other things, and that's good for them. And so you got to keep that in mind. So how does it look different from ministry in the States? Well, in America, a lot of times you're working from a Christian basis. In Japan, we don't have that. So your first time meeting someone, 9 times out of 10 is probably not the time to like, would you like to pray and receive Jesus Christ as your Savior? Like, you're not going to do that. They're be like, what are you talking about? So, making sure that, you're scheduling those interactions and trying to be proactive about reaching people. You can't just expect people to just seek you out. You have to be proactive in going to stuff and being places and showing up. And to do that, you have to schedule it. There's no way around it. So you have to schedule those things. Another hard lesson is just the need for rest. I tend to be more on the workaholic side. There's some people who are just like, I don't have to work. Great. No one's looking over my shoulder. But I tend to be on the other side. I do too much. So trying to pull back. And that's why we're constantly like trying to get help with stuff, because, scheduling those things takes time. And the other thing is, I would say for me personally would be, that you can't get it all done in a week. And so month to month, sometimes we're looking, 2, 3, 4 weeks ahead. Sometimes we'll look at a quarter ahead. I've got a calendar, a year calendar, like the whole year on one calendar. And we look at, okay, this year, this time it's going to look like this. And okay, this is going to be our slower time, and trying to make sure that we're intentional about that. Like in a few weeks, we're going to take off for a few days just because we need to unplug a little bit more. So yeah, those have been some hard lessons to learn, because otherwise you just look around and there's literally so much to do that you'll end up overworking yourself. And that's not good for your spiritual growth, your spiritual development. That's not good for your walk with the Lord. That's not a good testimony. It's just not good at all. So you want to make sure that you're doing that effectively, scheduling your time. The other thing is, how is it different in the States? Yeah, you have to actively seek out people a lot more, and you probably would face that a little bit in the States too, depending on the region that you're in, and what you do with your time. So yeah, pretty cool stuff. All right, well, it's not this glamorous, trooping through the jungle every day, but it's exciting to be able to look back and see the growth, personally, but also in the lives of the people that you spend time with, and see them, either go from discovery, like, well, this is new, to, or even just like first engaging with, or the people who maybe were Christians, but then they need to be discipled, seeing that growth over time, and just, it's really neat to see. And I've shared this with other people as well. Let's see here. So we are excited about what's going on. I've got one more question. We're going to answer this. If anybody else has a question, please drop it in the comments. I'm going to take this and maybe one more if we have time for it. How different would Recon Ministry? How different would Recon Ministry would be in the countries? How different would Recon Ministry? I'm guessing this means how different would Recon Ministry be in the countryside? And if that is the case, I think it would take a lot more time. Life in the country is very different than life in the city. Just like in the States, there's places here that you can get away with not even having a car. You probably can't do that in the country. You're probably not going to go to language school in the country. So I don't think you'd be ill-equipped if you tried to do that in the countryside. Now, we are looking at making a slight adjustment to... Oh, would you reckon... Okay, I'm sorry. Would you reckon ministry... How different would you reckon ministry would be in the countryside? Okay, thank you. Thank you for clarifying. Ministry would look a little different, and you have to realize that the country is more traditional, and there's a lot more pervasive rituals and traditions that people hold to, and that's where they find their identity in. Like, we do this, and we do it all the time, and this is what we do every year, and we are not going to change, and so with Japan being a traditional culture, you'll find that even stronger in the countryside. That doesn't mean they don't need the gospel. It just means you would be facing those hurdles a lot more. So, yeah, you'd be looking at that. All right. I've got one more coming. No problem. I know we've got slow chat enabled. Maybe I should just disable that next time. But thank you guys for your questions. And yeah, if you have something else that you're thinking about or considering, we'd love to hear from you. Send me an email, james@reachingjapan.com. We've got some exciting developments happening even in the States right now. that we're going to probably be able to share with you in the next few weeks, hopefully. I can't say too much yet, but some of you know about Chris, some of you guys don't, but we'll save that for another time. So, all right. Thank you guys so much for jumping on here. Thank you so much for participating, asking great questions. And yeah, next month, probably around the end of the month, we're going to do another one. And it's going to be about what you need to know before you come to Japan. Coming to Japan isn't just about learning Japanese and culture, because you're going to build relationships, you're going to spend time with people, and as those conversations progress, and as you're sowing those seeds and salting those conversations, they're going to ask you stuff. They're going to ask you questions, and if you're not ready, it's going to be pretty embarrassing. So we're going to talk about that next month. All right. Thank you guys so much for jumping on here, and hope you guys have a great rest of your evening. I'm going to go have a great rest of my day. See ya.